Let's talk about the passing lane on the freeway. Now when I say that, most people are going to assume that I'm going to talk about slow drivers in the left lane. That's not what I'm going to talk about. This is my opinions on what I think of the passing lane on a freeway, and I feel like I'm alone in these thoughts. Most people tend to disagree with me. So here's my thought. A typical 2 or 3 or 4 lane highway, the left-hand lane, innermost lane, is reserved for passing slower traffic. That already seems a little odd to me because there is a speed limit and you're supposed to stay at the speed limit. And if you go too slow, you can get a ticket. If you go too fast, you can get a ticket. So you gotta kind of hover right around that speed limit, generally 60 miles an hour, at least in Washington. I understand some vehicles need to go slower, like semi-trucks and bigger vehicles, things like that, which is fine. The outermost lane is kind of reserved for that kind of traffic. So there is a lane to go slow. When you're talking about a 2, 3, or 4 lane highway, you're supposed to, I guess, think of that as really only a 1, 2, or 3 lane highway, because the leftmost lane is not to use other than passing. Washington State Law RCW 46.61.100 says, keep right except when passing. There's some interesting little tidbits in this information here too. So here's the one that's talking about the freeways. Upon all roadways having 2 or more lanes for traffic moving in the same direction, all vehicles shall be driven in the right-hand lane then available for traffic. Except, and here's the kicker, when overtaking and passing another vehicle proceeding in the same direction, when traveling at a speed greater than the traffic flow. So that's your actual passing lane. That's your getting in the left lane to getting around everyone. And then down here, number 4, it is a traffic infraction to drive continuously in the left lane of a multi-lane roadway when it impedes the flow of other traffic. So everybody complains about traffic and how slow you get to your destination nowadays, but yet our highways are really reduced by 1 lane. You're not supposed to use it, only for passing people. That last statement there, it's illegal to stay in that lane. But then it's not illegal if you're passing cars. So it's just this complex set of laws that kind of contradict each other, and people just kind of run with it. But yet now, as of June, Washington State is starting to actually crack down and pull people over who are driving slow in the left-hand lane. And everybody says that. Everybody says there's so many slow drivers in the left-hand lane. What does that even mean? Is that people going 50 miles an hour? Is that people going 60 miles an hour? Is 60 miles an hour considered slow to you? I definitely wouldn't consider somebody driving 60 miles an hour in the left-hand lane slow. Everyone seems to complain about this, but in my 20 years of driving on the highways in this state, I don't think I've once been upset at somebody traveling slower than me in the left-hand lane. I would simply just change lanes and go around them if I needed to. But you might say that's the problem. Changing lanes is statistically a dangerous maneuver to perform on the freeway. And you'd be right. And that's kind of my point. When I'm on the freeway, I generally drive in the left-hand lane and I set my cruise control to 65 miles an hour, which is that unspoken, kind of agreed upon speed that you can go over the speed limit without getting pulled over. Now, would I be considered a slow driver being in that lane going 65 miles an hour? If you say yes to that, I say you're traveling way too fast. I'm kind of towing that line of what is legal in the sense that technically I am speeding, but I won't get in legal trouble because of it. The idea of getting out of the way for somebody traveling faster than that is asinine to me. Based on 2015 data from the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration, 27% of all fatalities involve speeding. And yes, I know that I'm technically speeding, and if I was in an accident, I would be part of that statistic. But for the guy coming up behind me at 75 miles an hour, I now have to make a dangerous lane change to get out of his way, just to allow him to continue breaking the law as much as he is. I'm now putting myself in a dangerous situation to aid him. And that's kind of my whole point. I am constantly passing cars in the left lane by going 65 miles an hour. But there's always going to be somebody going faster than me. So I'm constantly having to get out of the lane, let them through, but now I'm behind slow traffic, and I want to get back to 65 miles an hour, and I got to get back over to pass them. This turns a typical drive down the freeway into a complex set of mentally exhausting and constant dangerous lane changes. Let me show you. So here we have a typical 4-lane highway. You got your lanes 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is the slowest lane, 2 is a little faster, 3, and then 4 is your passing lane. Here's me in the passing lane. Let's say I'm going about 65 miles an hour. That means I'm passing most of the traffic in the other lanes. Eventually, another car will come up on me. And now they want to get around me because they're going faster than 65. But I'm still passing cars. So I stay in the lane until I can make a safe lane change. And then that person can get around me. Now in this lane, I have to slow back down because I was passing most of these cars going 65. So I now have to wait for an opportunity, make a change into the passing lane so I can get around them. Now again, I'm still passing cars this whole time. Until another car wants to come up and get around me that's going faster. But that's kind of my point here. I'm currently passing other cars. So at what point is the law of me being in the passing lane okay versus me impeding traffic for people behind me wanting to speed? Back in this lane, I gotta get over into the passing lane to pass him. I see another car coming behind me really fast. I gotta get back over, let them by. Another car, I gotta get into the passing lane. This is the dance I do on the freeway. It's constant. I'm always changing lanes from the passing lane to the lane next to it, and back and forth. Let's see what happens here too. Another car wants to get around me. He's impatient. I wait for my opportunity. I'll make that lane change. Oh, but somebody else wants to change lanes. And of course, that's a little dramatic reaction, but it is something I think about all the time. When you're making those lane changes, like I said earlier, it is statistically one of the most dangerous things you can do. Something like 9% of all accidents are lane changes or merges. So in that situation right there, where I was in front of another car and I decided to lane change right at the same time somebody else was lane changing, accident. So that is my whole beef about the passing lane on the freeway. It turns what could be a nice leisure drive down the freeway of just going constant speed into this set of just lane change after lane change after lane change after lane change. It's exhausting. I remember Mythbusters one time did an episode about changing lanes and if it's faster and what causes backups, things like that. And it was super interesting. One quick note was the person that actually like weaves in and out of lanes to get where they're going faster. Over the course of the experiment, I think they said that person got there like 6% faster than the other people that were just going in, like say the other person in the leftmost lane, but not the passing lane. So they did get there faster, but it was minimal and it was a super stressful drive. That was just kind of an interesting note about the lane weavers. But when it comes down to traffic slowing down and backups, the biggest contributor is people pressing their brakes. Because when you tap on your brakes, you might not even slow down that much, but the person behind you might see that and they'll tap on their brakes. And maybe they put their brakes on a little bit longer than you do and slow down a little bit more, which daisy chains to the person behind them and they have to tap on their brakes and slow down to match that speed. Maybe they slow down even a little bit further. And that just goes down the chain. One of the biggest contributors to traffic jams is really somebody could have been way up there. They just slowed down just a little bit for whatever reason. Maybe there was a spider in the car or something like that. And they got scared and they kind of hit the brakes really quick and then kept going. That one little insignificant event daisy chains down the line of cars behind you. And then eventually gets to a point where cars are going 20 miles an hour or something like that. Because it just compounds after every person is doing that. And that's kind of what I have to do sometimes when I need to get out of the way of somebody into another lane. The person that's in the lane I'm changing into, maybe they hit their brakes because they want to increase that distance between me and him since I just came into his lane. I don't know. These are all things I think about all the time, and people complain about the left lane so much that I just think it's unfounded. And I have to be in the minority because there's something like 40 states have a law in place about that being a passing only lane. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. To me, if you're going 60 miles an hour or over, preferably over, the left lane is for you. And just that statement is illegal. I get it. I get that I am legally incorrect here. I just can't wrap my head around why it's a law. Maybe you can enlighten me. What are your thoughts on the passing lane? I would love if somebody out there agreed with me, because I get in arguments with my wife all the time about this. Sarah and I always go round and round and round, and of course neither of us want to concede to the other, but she definitely is winning because the law's on her side. But what are your thoughts? I would love to know what you think. All right, signing off for now. I'll see you guys tomorrow.